So, all right, we're talking about beer as we come back on. So go ahead. Okay.
Yeah. So the two beers were for the brothers that are not Baptists.
We can't start with a punchline. We're not going to be like the Seinfeld show and work backwards from the end of the show to the beginning of the show. Okay, so there's the brother goes in.
There's a guy that's going in Tulsa, and he orders 3 beers.
So there's 3 beers at the bar. Okay.
3 beers at the bar, and everybody thinks this guy's weird. How come you're ordering 3 beers?
Yeah.
And he said, well, my brothers live in separate states, so we decided when I departed. Those other places,
yeah,
they all went in different ways, that they would all have a beer in honor of their brother. So they decided you just order 3 at a time.
So we'd have 3, and then he'd eventually drink all 3.
Yeah, you're going to drink the 3 like you're drinking with your brothers. You're going to have 3 beers.
So he can think of them while he's there.
Yeah. So he did that for a month or so, and then one day he comes in and he orders only 2 beers, and the bartender goes up. I'm sorry to hear that one of your brothers or see that one of your brothers is gone.
Yeah.
And he said, no, that's not at all. I became a Baptist 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oh, so the third. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why.
So he said he could still drink for the brothers because they're not Baptists.
So yeah, so he's a what would they call that, a wet Baptist, and not watery wet.
His brothers are drinking, not him.
Okay. Now, before we switch off, we were actually talking about Dick Blumenthal.
Yeah, he's
senator now. We're talking about 12 years ago.
About roughly 12 years ago, he came on the show and he basically. Talked about the monopoly power that exists in the medicine, in medicine in general.
Sure.
And he implied this is something that broke on the show, and I didn't see it anywhere before. It was on the show, and he talked about Danbury Hospital and
corporate monopoly in healthcare.
That was monopolizing things in this area.
Yeah.
And I was. That's the role of, again, public access.
Sure.
That I broke a show here first, an idea here first, before it was out in the news anyplace.
It's a great topic for discussion, and certainly, to have somebody of his stature, Attorney General at the time, actually talk about something along those lines. Now you're thinking, this is something that maybe he's going to do a little investigating on,
and he did, and there was some stuff for a couple of years after that. But I guess somebody said, this is not your alley to go up or whatever, because nothing ever really came out of it. But I mean, that's an example of something that was in the news, and it didn't go away in 6 months. It took a while. He filed suit in court. There was some stuff going back and forth. And now Danbury Hospital is the 3rd largest hospital and profitable, one of the most profitable hospitals in the state.
Yep.
I think it's either number 3 or number 1 in profit.
Yeah.
But it's the 3rd largest in the state.
Yeah. Not that there's anything wrong with capitalism or profits, but when you have a
depressed economy,
and a horse collar on a whole area, where you're the only show in town.
All of this.
All due respect to Comcast.
Yeah.
When you're the only show in town or the only show in the area, then you kind of have there are no market forces at play to keep prices in check. You can raise your prices to whatever the market will bear based on the fact that there's nobody to compete with.
There's limitations, but the point I was making in bringing that out is that we first broke the story here. There was some activity, and I don't know for what reason why it didn't happen, but you do have what I said before.
It's
it's number 3 in the state, where it was number 7 or number 8 years ago, and it does control this entire area.
How many major hospitals are there in Connecticut? Yale, New Haven, probably.
Yale, New Haven, and Hartford Hospital are the larger.
Yeah,
and Danbury is the 3rd largest, and it might be the most profitable out of the hospitals.
Probably being located in Fairfield County, where they probably can get a little bit better prices.
And now they just bought New Milford Hospital, so you could say this entire corner of Connecticut is You know what I mean? They're the power of B.
Yeah,
you know?
they're the only show in town.
You know, and if you could say that other people, if they're not making it, they're subsidizing with their the revenue. They could subsidize other entities. I don't know, but it was first brought up on this show. It was interesting.
Yeah,
and you know, there's some certain other things. You know, for example. When Congressman Murphy first ran for office, he was up against Nancy. What was her name?
Oh boy, I'll remember. Sure, and she was only in for about 20 years.
Nancy Johnson.
Nancy Johnson.
Nancy Johnson. He was in a race against Nancy Johnson, and then the polls, they were calling it close.
Yeah.
You know, so he came on the show, and we did a good job on this TV show, the Community Forum, and then within a couple of weeks. A lot of people saw, hey, good show, John, blah, blah, blah. Then he was suddenly polling ahead of her. You know, so I'm not saying I put him ahead, but I think it helped turn the corner.
You could see things happening like that interview.
Yeah.
And you could see certain trends. As you say, all of a sudden, he was taken as a very credible candidate. And the point at which I had a feeling that she knew she was in the fight of her life was when she started coming out. She had never been much of one for negative ads before. But all of a sudden, there was a point where she started to have these ads which tried to tie Murphy to being a terrorist sympathizer. You'd see the conversations on the screen going back and forth from the Middle East to America and all over the place. And if Chris Murphy gets your vote for Congress, then these conversations won't be there'll be nothing stopping everybody, because he was against the Patriot Act.
Right.
And she was a big proponent of the Patriot Act.
But Murphy was talking about positive moves in health care, and she was talking about the donut hole.
Yeah.
That was the greatest thing that she had accomplished.
Yeah.
And all the people out there, they hated that whole thing. You know, that donut hole, I get to that, and then I got to pay that, and that's so onerous, and blah, blah, blah. And she was the author of that. I think that if there was any issue that took her down, it was that she was so proud about putting that donut hole in there, that deductible.
Now, her husband, of course, is a doctor, which, you know, so there was a lot, and very tied in with the medical, with the HMO lobby and the pharmaceutical lobby.
Right.
But
and I don't think she came on public access. She didn't give us much weight. So again, I'm also using that angle here. You know, as we're speaking, that there's an underestimation of what people are watching. They're not watching the biggies as much as you think, because
people can get really annoyed. I think no matter where you are in the political spectrum, you've got to be very upset with mainstream media. And I don't buy the argument that any of them are liberal. Like we talked about in our first show, the common denominator amongst all major media owned by 5 groups, one being Roger Ailes, not Roger Ailes, but Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, Murdoch has Fox.
He owns Fox, and he owns so many newspapers across the country and things of that nature that these are all corporate entities that are running.
They already predetermined this is what we're going to be on this. You know, it may not be blatant. We hate this candidate.
Yeah.
But by the way the news is reported, you can tell that they're not for that candidate or whatever. You know, they just keep pulling rabbits out of the hat without saying we hate this guy.
I think Murdoch and Fox are the most blatant when it comes to that. For instance, when I'll call him molester boy, a representative in Florida, they got caught sending emails and propositioning aides. Congressional aides, both male and female kids.
Yeah.
And they got caught at that. When Fox first broke that story, they identified him as D, Democrat. Never retracted it, never undid the bad that they had done. Likewise, when the guy in Iowa, the senator in Idaho, not Iowa, but Idaho, with the hand underneath the stall, when they broke that story, Larry...
It was at the airport. Yeah, the guy at the airport, I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Likewise, Fox identified this senator as a Democrat.
And they
trying to make the point, I guess, that subliminally to their audience that those Democrats are such...
They're all bad.
They're all
When in fact there were a few bad Republicans there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean that cuts across party line. People that do things like that. That's got nothing to do with.
But you got such a bias though that you just try to constantly this is what the boss wants, so this is what we're going to do, and it happens with the other networks also.
And
ABC's owned by Disney, and whatever Disney wants, Disney gets. And
that corporation and those people that run that corporation are by no means liberal or progressive or anything of that nature. So you can say all you want, and anybody can say all they want that there's a liberal media bias. But let me tell you something: it ain't so. It doesn't exist.
Certain news just doesn't get on if that's the corporate thinking. And when you get to this free world of the public access, then what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
Because we do a better job, I think, of covering what's going on at the local level. So
and I think that and the alternative media, blogs, where blogs absolutely have a point of view. There's no doubt they have a point of view, but you have to look at them and read them and use a little critical thinking. Fact check. Take a look at different blogs. Take a look at different points of view, and then draw your own conclusions. That's really what makes for thinking individuals. But anybody that's going to watch any of the mainstream media and just blindly accept their pablum, forget it. You're not going to be. This is where it's happening, folks. This is real television. This is real, clean, clear thought.
Some of the things that happen in town. You can argue about the News Times, all up and down. I don't think they're as bad as they are, but they certainly are pretty bad about certain things. For example, I had a complaint about the way they were handling notices at City Hall, and I came back from being 2 hours at a hearing up in Hartford, actually 3 hours. I didn't get done till 12. I forgot. It didn't start at 10. I had to be there at 9, and it went on and on. And at one point, they were asking me whether or not I was a member of the Communist Party. We're talking about, we had our corporation counsel that was sent up there to ask me questions like that, because I'm complaining about having a proper notice put on the wall at a proper time.
Yeah, as it's
supposed to be under the public, access law, or I should say what is it? The public
probably on FOIA.
FOI. So I complained to FOI, and there was this hearing. It went on for 3 hours, and I ended up winning. And I brought the results of, hey, I won this decision. I brought it down to the paper, and I was astounded. There was never not an iota, not even a line about the fact that I won that case. There was there might have been a mention that this was happening, but that's it. And then it was never mentioned again, even though I won the case, and they had they were like slapped on the wrist. You need to in the future be more careful about filing things timely. You just can't say the day of that, that we're going to have this hearing at 4 o'clock. You got to give notice, 24 hours notice, and it's got to be noted in the town clerk's office, and it's got to be put in, what I mean? And that's what they hadn't done. They decided that morning or whatever it was that they were going to have a hearing at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
I think a lot of the problem with newspapers, and it seems to be across the spectrum of newspapers, because the actual physical newspaper is a dying art. You don't see that. The circulation is down everywhere except in that rag they call USA Today. But in the News Times, they don't sell many newspapers, so they can't afford to have beat reporters at City Hall. They can't afford to have people covering local news. They kind of have to regurgitate stuff that's coming down through Associated Press or one of the other.
But don't you think if you bring them the news, here, I won the case, there wouldn't have been something, it was brought down there to them.
It's definitely different when you actually bring the facts to them. They don't even have to hardly fact check it to know that it occurred.
Yeah.
And to actually print it in the newspaper. You think that would, you think if they were like the TV media, where media seems to love a good cat fight. You think if the papers followed suit on that they probably would be. Although the News Times does have the, the not just the letters to the editor, but the little blurbs.
Yeah, the blogs.
The little people call in things and they'll play them, and they seem to like stuff that's not necessarily factual, but it's hot and heavy conversation or hot and heavy, not even dialogue, but monologue kind of stuff, and that's kind of sad to see that. I mean, the
online is more to the point than the actual paper, except the Sunday paper. There's something to it, but
yeah.
But there's another example as the physical papers are starting to decline and go away. What's going to be your alternative? You got to have if you're not going to the center of the city and you're standing around listening to people on pedestals talk. You should tune in to your public access to get the information.
Absolutely, and public access is under fire right now. Public television is under fire. National Public Radio and things of that nature, members of Congress, certain members of Congress, we'll call them Republicans, are trying to cut out all monies for National Public Radio and public television, Channel 13 in our area, Channel 16 in Boston that we get on our cable system also. And it's a crying shame because you get good content, not just art and entertainment and things of that nature, but you also have good points of view. I mean, you get a lot of diversity of points of view and long discussions about issues instead of sound bites.
But as we were saying before, the corporate giants want to control.
Yeah.
And it's been going that way for a while. You've got six entities controlling everything, and it's just a lot easier to control six than have 166 or 266 per state or whatever outlets for news, whatever that may be. So I don't know if it's that many in Connecticut, but you know what I mean. Even if it's 66, you get 66 different points of view.
Yeah, so you're going to get a little bit of diversity, certainly.
I know at Comcast we got about 20 producers, even though we have quite a few religious shows, so maybe we got 12 that are producing something that's, but anybody out there, by the way, could be a producer. They just got to come down here and with a crew of about 5, and you can have your own show. But you got to be committed to a 13-week deal.
And if you want to do a religious show, that's great because you might get people on to talk about religion, people from different religions, so you can get a comparison and contrast of a religion, which, of course, leads us all to the conclusion in the end that religions are all very similar in their bases.
Right.
So, then you also get the rants on the show on Comcast occasionally, and the conspiracy theorists on occasion. But and that's all right though, because it gives people a chance to stop and think and consider and then do their fact checking, and different points of view are a great thing, and that's what you'll find on cable television.
Yeah. So I've had. All kinds of interesting books. I talked on the first show about a couple of books. There was a book on the Second Wives Club. That one had me squirming because I started asking questions about where this idea come from. Blah blah blah. Then I was getting questions back like what do you think about this? Oh, wait a minute. I'm not here to answer questions. I'm here to ask you questions.
So they threw the hot potato back in your lap.
But I mean that's the danger when you're doing a book interview.
They want a reaction.
So did you read this book? Well, no. But I can ask, who, what, when, and where, and how.
But you want the author of the book or whoever's promoting the book to excite your imagination and get you to want to read that book.
Yeah, and now how did this come up? Well, this happened or that happened. You get through it, but when they start asking you questions, then you're saying, they're trying to test as to whether or not from a month ago when you booked maybe you read the book. And I got so many books to read that I don't have enough time to read them all.
I have a great author historian. Well, I call him Marv Alpert, although he's not Marv Alpert. The sports reporter is Mark Albertson, who's come on, and I've done with him like I've done with a lot of other authors that have been on. I intentionally don't read the book. I've had an author, Colleen Plimpton, who came on and wrote a book. That's a chapter in a book about Woodstock, because she was at the original Woodstock, and she has books about gardening, wonderful books about gardening, and how gardening relates to inter-family relationships, how you build relationships through gardening. And I intentionally, if I'll look at the book, I'll look at it a little bit, but I want to hear about the book from them. I don't want to be cornered into asking specific questions. I want to ask more generic questions and give them a chance to really let the information flow and let the ideas be creative in presenting the book as they were creative in creating the book.
I've done quite a few shows having to do with DAWs, or you know, the Kiwanis Club, the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, and all of the things they're doing, and you know, it's surprising the number of people. What's that club? You know, that don't know or never belonged, or
that's
they
what
saw
you're here for, to bring to the audience's attention.
And because you know, people this is the internet generation. They go to work, they come home, they eat something, go on the internet or go on TV, watch the TV, and they don't get involved with the community. And
they don't have that interaction that you have.
Yeah, the interaction of years ago is not what it used to be. So it's a way of trying to get people reconnected with the things that are going on in the community. Yeah. If you can't go during the day, a lot of these clubs now are having night meetings, or they're having early morning meetings before you do go to work. If you start at 9 o'clock.
Bethel Chamber and the Stony Hill Four Corners, likewise, that same thing.
The Rotary's got an 8 o'clock that gets done at 10 of 9, so you get out and maybe that day you might be 10 minutes late, but you'll get to work.
Yeah,
and you know what I mean. You'll also get you'll get to the Rotary Club, but you know what I'm saying. There are a lot of valuable groups doing good in the community, and many hands lighten the load.
Definitely.
And the attendance, the number of these groups have been shrinking over the years because of what I call the internet generation. So I make it like it's one of my goals that every year.
You bring it back and put it on the table and say, hey, here it is.
Here it is. You know, this is what all these folks are doing. You ought to try to get involved and belong to one of these groups.
Yeah.
You know, whichever group it may be. You know, I'm partial to Kiwanians, but, you know, and you might be a Rotarian by nature. I don't know, but...
I never talk about religion on my show.
Okay.
I'm a Methodist. What's the one that's from Ethiopia? Rastafarians.
Yeah.
I substitute that for Rotarians.
Oh, okay.
I'm a Rastafarian. Rastafarian. By my community dreadlocks. But so it's good to get the word out about different things and touch on topics that otherwise people won't get the opportunity to learn about.
And you know, I've had all the constitutional officers. I've filmed them here. I've gone to Hartford and filmed them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. You see them in both aspects. Like Nancy Wyman, our lieutenant governor now, has been on the show repeatedly, and I filmed her here, and I've gone to Hartford and filmed her in her office. You know, and so you know, it's
what do you see as a difference? You know, that brings right to my mind the question: What do you see a difference in interviewing here versus interviewing in their territory?
It's tougher because you got to edit, and that's what the people say. Geez, you know, how do you do your job and do what you do? Well, the reason I could do the both is I do most of my interviews here.
Yeah,
but when you do something like that, like go to Hartford and let's say do Susan Beisowitz in her office, she's no longer. I'm referring to the past Secretary of State. You got to travel up, to travel back, but then you got to edit.
Yeah,
you got to put that interview on a tape so it's ready to air on Comcast.
Yep.
And that's all work. It's a good hour of maybe an hour and a half of in studio or in Comcast work on top of going out to Hartford and doing the interview.
That's why we don't go on location.
Yeah.
Almost never. Bob Garabell and I went up to Washington, to the Washington Library to see an hour presentation by Ralph Nader. What we did with that is we brought it back and we cut it up into 3 20-minute segments, which we haven't done the second and the third one yet. We did the first 20 minutes, and we talked a little bit about Ralph's presentation, showed the first 20 minutes of it, and then recapped what he had talked about. So there was a little bit of editing involved there, but not too very much. I think we really didn't have to edit because we just did it right here in the studio. We fitted that 20 minutes right into the center of the show.
Speaking of editing, the longest edit job I did was I filmed the entire Irish festival one year. That was probably 7 years, 7 years ago.
And how many weeks did that go on for?
And that probably took the better part of an afternoon, close to 2.5 hours, 3 hours to edit. You know, all these shots and saying, well, I got to make a half an hour show out of this. I did a pretty good job, and I'm here by myself doing it. It wasn't the easiest thing.
Doing the cut and splice, that's tough.
Yeah. And I could almost had 2 shows, but when people saw, hey, good job, who did that? I did it.
Excellent. But and people that
but I haven't done it. It was so tedious. I didn't do it since.
People that come in and have been taking the class lately with ideas of maybe starting up their own shows, which is a great thing. That's the wisdom that I bring to them is that try to keep it as simple as humanly possible.
Right.
If you can let it be free flowing like this show, and just have a conversation and don't get into too much need for editing. It's all better that way. All better. I like it so much better. It's because I come in here to the studio 2 hours a week, and that's it. We tape 2 shows, and we can fit 2 shows into 2 hours, and that's it. No editing, hopefully necessary. We haven't edited too much. We've rarely had to start over again, except for the time that I started up the show early on. Way back when I started off the show saying something like "Welcome to Progressive 2."
No,
that had to go. We had to stop. Start it again. But
the bloopers happen.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes when I have a blooper like that, I just keep going, because people know the audience knows me. At this point in time,
and they'll understand.
He does these little flubs all the time. You know, he must have had a long day. You know, they'll look at me. Yeah, he's tired today. You know how I know this? Because when I do some of the political stuff, and I'm knocking on doors, and I'm up in the first ward someplace. Hey, honey, look who's at the door here. And I come to the door, and they take a look at it. Yeah, that's him.
We're out of time. Are we out of time already?
We're out of time again.
All right.
Okay.
Progressive Soup.
Okay.
Stevenson, John, Gogliettino.
Okay.
And we'll be back another time.